couple of times weekly, where we talk about job search, in particular, the gritty reality of job search, not just the theory of how it should go, but what actually happens, what we see in the real world. Fake jobs, rude recruiters, all that kind of stuff, all kinds of shenanigans, ghosting, you name it. This is where we talk about that stuff. So if you are between jobs right now, you're looking to get hired, or you're just looking to advance your career, you've come to the right place. This is primarily a Q&A. I don't have an agenda of what to talk about. I don't have a topic, really. I'm purely relying on your questions. So if you are a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to see a chat box somewhere nearby, near the vicinity of my face. So get in the chat box, let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out and answer your questions. As always, a shout out goes to my YouTube channel members. Snap, my Patreons, my super thanks donors, and of course to you, my participants. Thank you for being here. The title of today's episode of Honest HR Nitrous is Why is Getting Hired So Broken? That's our topic. Not the most original thing, but it's a sentiment echoed by a lot of people today, especially a lot of job seekers who are just having a hard time with the process. And they make a good point because right at the moment, hiring itself, recruitment and selection, is going through a bunch of changes, mainly driven by technology, particularly AI. And you never know, we might not even get recruiters being humans for much longer, if you believe some of the predictions that are being made out there. I don't know about that. I'm a little bit more conservative on that, but I do think that there's definitely a shift happening. Already we've seen AI being, sort of rolled out into a lot of aspects of hiring. We've had ATS for a long time, applicant tracking systems, that now are incorporating even more AI into them to filter resumes and filter applicants and yield insights into people and all this kind of stuff. So we're seeing a lot of that. And what's interesting to me personally, I don't know if anybody else finds this interesting, is it's kind of like another battle in the war between the posted job market and the hidden job market. As the posted job market, with its AI tools and gradual shift towards dehumanizing the process, as that has less and less rapport with applicants, more applicants are sort of being pushed into the hidden job market where they're using networking and other things to get their job. This stuff has been around with us since time immemorial, but it's pushing people in that direction because going through the standard hiring process for HR organizations is getting so undesirable for a lot of candidates. It's lengthy, it's stupid, it's impersonal. They just really don't like it. You thought it was bad when you had to deal with a human. It's even worse when we're taking the humans out of the process. One would think it would be more efficient. That would be the obvious prediction. You eliminate human error and all this, but that's kind of not what a lot of people are seeing. They're seeing quite the opposite. It's getting even worse because there's no humans in the process. You're dealing with, a computer system basically. So anyway, that's some of the issues that are around today. Also, why is hiring so broken? Well, for a start, you had enough problems with humans in the process, right? I don't know if you guys have experienced that, dealing with incompetent recruiters or rude recruiters or, people like this. You know what I mean? Giving kiss-off answers, ghosting, all that kind of stuff. That's a lot of one of the big reasons why that stuff turns off a lot of candidates. People are preferring to talk to the decision makers themselves directly, Anyway, get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with. I'm here to help you get hired, essentially, and talk about some of what's going on out there. In the previous live stream today, we talked about fake jobs. Okay, so that's definitely a part of this, right? Companies are not helping themselves by doing that. It's all contributing to push people away from posted jobs, from responding to posted jobs as a way to get hired. That's one of the effects of this. So there you go. So I'm just here filling dead air, waiting for people to ask questions. So I see there's 11 people here. Get in the chat. Let me know what you're struggling with, what you're dealing with, and I'll do my best to help you out. While I'm waiting for the first questions to roll in, check out some of my courses. If you're wanting to learn how hiring works, get that course right there. My Get Hired course. There's a link in the description. That's where I cover everything related to getting a job in the posted job market and getting a job in the hidden job market. So whichever your goal is, or both, that will help you with both of them. So that's where all my advice is all in one place. Yeah, there you go. Now let's talk about why is getting hired so broken? That is, after all, the title of this episode. There's several reasons. If you have not noticed it by now, if you've ever tried to apply for a job in the posted job market, usually the communication is terrible. What defines this process is the company's HR department, or the organization's HR department, is guiding you through their process to fill a position. So they want everyone to apply in a standard way. They want to filter the applications a certain way. They want to do interviews with people, or a certain subset of people. And they want to control the interview process itself. So they will dictate to you how their interview process works. So some companies are doing this new thing where they're getting the candidates to essentially film videos of themselves answering different questions. And then the videos are submitted to the recruiter. So the recruiter is no longer doing the job interview in real time. They're not like, traditionally you would do a face-to-face job interview, right? Now, the big change that's happened in the last few years is that more companies are doing their job interviews remotely over teleconferencing, so over Zoom or some equivalent. And that's like the first change. Now they're going a step beyond, and it's not even a real-time interview. They're sort of getting you to do an interview that's almost like another job application, because you go to a website and you follow a process, and the process involves you answering questions into a camera like you would in teleconferencing, except that it's recording you and it's keeping your recordings in a database. And then the recruiter is reviewing your responses in a non-real-time basis. So what that means is that if you start answering a question, they can watch the video, and then maybe you get to a certain point and they decide, okay, I've seen enough. They can stop watching the video. So from their perspective, it's more efficient in the sense that they don't have to put as many man hours into it. But the problem is, for the recruiter, for the candidate, it's even more dehumanizing. God, as I trip over my words. I tripped over my words and fell flat on my face. So not many candidates are fans of this, and some people are finding. I was talking about social anxiety a little while ago on this channel, like half an hour ago. And, if you get social anxiety talking to a human, either face-to-face or on teleconferencing, some people experience it even more when they're simply taking a video of themselves answering the job interview question as part of the interview process that some companies have now, So anyway, all of that is, there's two things that I think emerge out of that. One is that these processes are now, they're more efficient from the perspective of the employer. That means they can put even less time into getting to know candidates. But it's also turning off a lot of candidates even more, because it's even more dehumanizing than it used to be, and impersonal. And a lot of people would prefer to deal with people. And so that's why it pushes more people in the direction of getting a job through networking. I mean, that's usually how people get jobs anyway, once you're on the inside of an industry, right? you might do interviews as like kind of a formality, but basically the way you put yourself up for the role and how you're being considered is all done, through networking, by people talking to other people. Sometimes this usually involves you going to see the hiring manager, right? Something like that. If they're internal to your company, it's very easy to do, right? If you work in the same building as the hiring manager, they're hiring someone for their team in another division or something, but they're all in the same building. You would go to their office and say, hey, I understand you're hiring, can you tell me more about the position, this kind of thing. And then, they tell you, and then you come back and you say, hey, just so you know, I'd like to throw my name in the hat for that, or throw your name in the hat and then throw your hat in the ring, right? I don't know where you throw the ring, into the sea or something. I'm not sure, but you know what I'm talking about. So it's very easy when you're internal to the company. And it's an extension of this to do something that's external to the company. Same process, right? Anyway, there are 18 people here. Thank you for being here. Get in the chat, because I'm just here talking off the top of my head. This is primarily a live Q&A, so I rely on questions from you guys that I try and answer for you and help you out. If I don't get any questions, I'm going to have to wind this down, so I'm going to need some questions. So if you're here, let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and then I can actually speak intelligently to something that might be of some use to somebody. In the meantime, like I said, if you want to learn how to get hired with me, check out that course right there. If you want to learn how to get yourself promoted and put yourself forward as a candidate for management jobs, middle management, even executive management, get that course. That'll teach you the communication skills that you need to tack on to be seen as a contender for those roles. And if you just want to learn business, there's a variety of reasons why you might want to. Check out that course right there, best bang for the buck anywhere. The reason why you might want to learn this stuff if you're an employee and you're doing a conventional career as an employee is because if you understand the scientific study of how to make money, which is what business is, it's the scientific study of how to make money, right? If you know this, then you'll be able to think more like your employer, and you'll be able to make decisions that are more in line with what your employer wants and wants to see. And that will help you to perform better in your role and get noticed or climb the ladder or whatever your goal is. So check that out. All of the links of these things are in the description box under this live stream. And I've also done FAQ videos where I talk to you all about the course, what it involves, how it works, so it's as transparent as possible. So check those out. Okay, the award for the first person in the chat today goes to Jason Weeks. Jason says, why, in your opinion, is getting hired today so broken as opposed to in the past? Well, there's been some shifts in the past and between now and in the past. And one of them that's I've observed personally over several decades is the erosion of communication skills, of protocol, etiquette, and decency. And so a lot of job seekers will complain that recruiters lie to them, are misleading. Even at the low level, things like saying, I'll get back to you, which unbeknownst to a lot of younger job seekers, that's sort of universal code in business speak for I will never get back to you because this is over, right? So saying I'll get back to you means it means a no, and it means we're done. That's usually what it means. Unfortunately, though, normally where you'd use that is you'd use it in circles where people understand this. But in hiring, especially hiring young people or people that are less experienced in getting jobs, they might not be familiar with that kind of lingo. So they're being misled. They honestly feel that, okay, you're telling me you're going to get back to me, but yet you're not getting back to me, right? Now, in these contexts, recruiters should know, in my opinion, that that's not the understanding that most people will derive when they say, I'll get back to you. So maybe I'm laboring the point, but there's been a real erosion of that kind of stuff. And as we go into the future, we're dehumanizing the process even more. We're not only are we not doing interviews in person as much, we're doing teleconferencing, like Zoom calls and things. That might be a pro or a con, depending on what your opinion is. But like I started out saying today, the fact that we're going to a form of interviews now where it's almost like the application process. You go to a website and then it asks you questions, and you film essentially a response. It takes a video of you, and then all of that's made available to the recruiter. So the recruiter can look at your responses, but not in real time. It's, they can listen to the first 10 seconds of your answer and then skip the rest if they want, So, we're seeing these kind of shifts. We're also seeing the effect of AI, where one would think it would be good. Like I said, you would think that AI would be a good thing in that it's just another tool. It's not the be all end all, but it's just another tool in our arsenal to be able to do things like the internet is. But it's not actually improving things. People don't like it. They would rather deal with a human than talk to a machine. You know what I mean? They would rather sit face to face with a human, being able to speak with them in real time, rather than do it remotely with talking to an AI. Obviously opinions vary, but generally speaking, that's the consensus of opinion. So it's just very surprising. It doesn't surprise me at all. HR has done a very bad job over the last 50 years. It's the area of business where we have the most to gain, simply because it does such a bad job. There's so much more efficiency gains you can make by being able to pick better people and treat them better, So it's been notoriously bad. And not to get too technical, but I'll just say this very briefly. Partly the reason is because HR is very schizophrenic. When you study HR, about half of the time, they talk about treating your employees like a resource, hence the name human resources. It's a very impersonal, very efficiency-driven way of handling employees. On the other hand, though, they also recognize that employees are individuals with motivations and feelings and ambitions and all this kind of stuff. So there's another whole massive branch of HR that deals with people's feelings, how to motivate them. For example, if you want to cut down on workplace harassment, things like this, you have to get into people's feelings and what provokes them to do different things in different circumstances. You have to pay attention to that. You can't treat them like a number and study that problem. So because it's so schizophrenic, we see this in the real world where you'll get an email from HR that talks to you in legalese, and then you'll get someone that comes and talks to you almost like they care about you, what you think, and then they go right back to treating you like a number again. It's very confusing and it's very ineffective. Okay, thank you for the questions. There's questions coming in now. This is good. Okay, so Jason says, I can speak to that. I get ghosted all the time after an interview. Yeah, exactly. I understand the reasons for it, but at the end of the day, when you get a recruiter misleading you and saying, oh yeah, we thought you were great and we'll be in touch, which is, of course, their way of saying, sorry, it's not happening, and they think that that's okay. You know what I mean? TP says, had a question around getting past the hundreds and thousands of applicants all applying at the same time. How can you stand out and get past this big hurdle? Well, there's one simple answer. You guys know what I'm going to say. It's you apply in the hidden job market where you're competing with one or possibly two people for every job. It's a lot better. But yeah, you see, posted jobs are 20% of all the jobs that are out there. So 80% of the jobs exist, but they're not posted. Now, of the ones that are posted, the 20% that are, you've got something like 80% of the applicants all competing for those 20% of the jobs. That's the big problem, right? Right now, in a sense, there's a bit of an opportunity because a lot of applicants don't realize that in order to stand a chance of applying for a posted job and being called in for an interview, these days, you really have to custom tailor your resume or your entire application to be considered, to pass that hurdle, that screening. Okay, because you've got like 800 people going in at once to compete for one job, they can afford to be very picky, right? Now, some people will be applying with a generic resume that they send out to every job. And the odds are is that this is not tailored to the specific job they're applying for, right? There'll be a bunch of stuff on your resume that these people haven't asked for, they don't care about, so it all dilutes what you do have. And what you do have that has not been made front and center, like of the things that they've asked for, that hasn't been made like the focus of your resume, and you might not have expressed it using the terms and lingo that they use, which means that if they're using keyword filtering and stuff like that, you get filtered out. If they said we're looking for frontline management experience, you sent in a resume that says you have supervisory experience. Now, we both know that those two terms mean the same thing. The only problem is that they use the term frontline management experience, and their keyword filter was tuned to filtering out any resume that doesn't include the words frontline management, right? So if you said supervisor, it filters you out. It's stupid, but it's true, right? So for these reasons and more besides, you need to customize your resume to every job you apply to stand a decent chance of getting called in for an interview. Okay. Now, right now, we've got a situation where about 50% of the applicants aren't using AI, and they don't realize they have to do this. So those are the ones that are getting usually filtered out, right? Like right off the hop. And the ones that are using these tools to apply for a lot of jobs, but are still able to customize their application, even though they're applying for a lot of jobs, because they're using like AI tools to help them with it. They're the ones that have a higher likelihood of getting an interview. Okay, so if you want to play this game, go in the door with 800 people and try and elevate yourself above the crowd. There's some things you can do. The only way to really stand out is to be like the best possible match for A, what they've said they're looking for, which is all the requirements on the job posting, and B, the things that are unstated that you could probably guess, like being a good communicator, having a good work ethic, being very punctual, having an ambition to work in this area, things like this. They don't explicitly state that stuff, but it is what they're looking for, or you could make a reasonable guess that they are also looking for that stuff too, right? So that's one way you can play this game. But a lot of people usually, like once you start your career, the way it works for a lot of people is that you never really go back to applying in the posted job market. Everything you get from that point is all in the hidden job market. So you're reaching out to employers and you're doing networking and things like that to surface the opportunities and then to be considered for them, right? So that's where I would recommend everybody focuses, because that's much more promising. All the good jobs are in the hidden job market because they don't need to post them. They're not having problems finding qualified people that would really want them. You know what I mean? So tune into that stuff as much as you possibly can. It just improves your odds. I fully understand that some people, especially if you're young, you might not be ready to get into that. Some people are just not tuned into that. That's fine. But for most people, the sooner you can get into that world, the better. Your career will go a lot further. GWK says, how do you get shortlisted? I feel that's where the problem starts. Well, I kind of mentioned that, like basically everything I just said to the last question, you could say that for this question, right? That's how you sort of, pass the initial screening of the of a posted job interview. Like for a posted job, when they do the initial screening of resumes, of applications, that's how you get shortlisted, by doing the things I just mentioned. Alex Roska says 3 days and 3 days off are okay if you get 3 days off correct and in the automotive industry, why you can't work only on one job post, like tests post job? What? Why you must do other posts? Sorry, Alex, don't really understand what you're saying. Alex says, I mean, why airbags, from example, and do other posts? Why not electronic airbags forever? Like, are you talking about specializing within one role or one area or something like that within automotive? Why you would want to specialize or not specialize? Well, if that's what you're asking, okay, it's a trade-off, right? If you have a broad skill set, that means you can do many, many things. The odds of you being able to do something that's needed go up, right? However, if you specialize in one area and you're like, you go really in depth, you have a depth skill set in one area, right? All things being equal, it means that you will be more valuable if you're working in that role, much more than a generalist. Okay, so it's a trade-off. So there is no one answer to what you should do. It depends on the details of where you are, what your ambition is, and what opportunities there are. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, but hopefully that makes sense. Feel free to elaborate if you can express that any clearer. I'd certainly be willing to go back and take another look at that. Weber says, hey there, how would you recommend framing a half-year employment gap on a resume? State the reason outright or sugarcoat? I don't like that word sugarcoat. That suggests that you're going to lie or say a bunch of nice-sounding things that aren't genuine. Listen, first of all, it depends on what situation you're talking about, because what you say is going to depend on who the hell you're talking to. Now, if you're talking to a recruiter, okay, recruiters don't like work gaps because first of all, recruiters are not looking for the best candidate. That's not what they're looking for, okay? They're actually looking for the least risky candidate. That's how this works, okay? So understanding this helps you understand what they're looking for, okay? Now, a work gap, as far as a recruiter is concerned, is a risk factor. What it says is that you've been unable to find work in the past. That's what it says. Now, they don't know why that is. Oh, sure, you can explain it. You could give a reason, but do they know that's really what went on? No, they don't. You could be lying. There could be more to it. So that's why they regard it, just any kind of work gap for any amount of time, as like a risk. Like, and I would say, like, anything over 3 months could potentially be regarded as a work gap to a recruiter, depending on the situation. Okay. The more specialized and high level your job is, the longer the work gap that's reasonable for you to find alternative employment, right? Okay. Now that's their situation. That's their perspective. Okay. Now, the only real way that I've ever heard of for you to be able to say something and put their mind at ease, where they'll from a technical point of view, it may not put their mind at ease, but from a humanist, emotional, personable type of perspective, it will. They'll probably regard you as, you're okay. That makes sense. I don't see any red flags. Is if you say that, during that work gap, it wasn't actually a gap. Okay, yeah, you weren't working at a job, but you were doing other things intentionally, like going back to school, getting training, things like this. They may even also accept, to a degree, taking care of a sick family member. Okay, you know what I mean? Especially if it's like, it seems legitimate, but the default thing is to be able to say, like, I took some kind of education or training, right? Now, let's pretend that you have a work gap right now and you haven't taken any training, right? Or any education. You didn't go back to school. You've been between jobs, right? Okay. So this is what I'd recommend. Go out right now and go register for a couple of like free courses somewhere, right? Don't take like some Mickey Mouse thing, but something like that that's related to your career or the jobs you're going for. just take it, like just some free kind of thing, and say like, look, this is not technically a work gap. What happened is I went back to school. I wanted to brush up on my skills in this area. This industry is moving, and I know that some things have really come to prominence over the last couple of years, and I want to make sure that my skill set was up to date. Also, I'm just interested in this stuff. That was half the reason too. So the idea appealed to me, So go out and like register for a couple of free courses, just, I don't know, to see what they're about. Then you can answer truthfully and say like, look, I've been taking this training, and now that I feel like my skills have been updated and I've learned a lot, now I'm ready to rejoin the workforce. And that's why I'm here. Something like that. You're not technically lying. You are taking courses. If you take like some AI courses or courses in your area, there's nothing dishonest about this. You're doing what you said you would do. And that's pretty much the only thing I know of that will really put their mind at ease and say, oh, okay, that makes sense. They could ask you, what courses are you taking? In which case you tell them, like, oh, okay. They won't know the course, but they'll, like, you seem like it's genuine, right? And if they call you on it and go deeper and say, what are you learning in the course? You can say, well, this course has like 5 modules and these are the names of the modules and this is what we, so it seems legitimate, right? So that's what I would say, Now, we all know that there could be other legitimate reasons too why you're out of work, right? We all know this. The problem is that they're going to be skeptical of most of the others. There's no way of verifying it. There's no way of, fact checking anything. You know what I mean? So that's why they don't like it. Now, if you get a job on the hidden job market, you talk to a hiring manager, none of this crap matters. They don't care about work gaps. This is purely a recruiter thing for the people that are chasing the posted jobs. Okay? Just so you know. Jason says, how do you grow your network if the people that were supposed to be your network is no longer available or optional? Yeah, okay, so listen. People misunderstand what a network is or what networking is. I think we've watched too many Hollywood movies over the years. I think everybody gets this impression that like you have this like giant circle of friends that like all know you and you do favors for each other and stuff like that. You do get that, but that's not the way it works for most people. Most people have other things to do than simply maintain a network every day. You know what I'm saying? What networking is, and the way introverts can do it, is that you create a network, you reach out to people, right? There's something in job search called direct outreach. And if you want to know what that looks like, I've done a video where it's just like a video of my desktop where I'm showing you how to do this. And it's linked in the description box below this live stream. So either you can look at the description box and see the link and click on it. The video is called How Successful People Get Jobs. Okay. So check out that video. That'll show you what this looks like. You're reaching out to people around you on demand. Okay. So it's not something you have to maintain and all this. You will know some people. You'll know like former coworkers in places you worked previously, right? Or former bosses, that you could, if you really wanted to, you could pick up the phone and say, hey, how's it going? Listen, I'm wondering if there's any opportunities, where you guys are. Are you guys, you kind of talk about what they're doing and you say like, hey, listen, just so you know, if ever there was an opportunity to come back, I'm open to that. I would entertain that. So, if ever you're looking for me, you know what you're getting with me. I'm right here. If there's an opportunity for that, let me know. Like this kind of thing, right? So you could do that, but the majority of what your networking is going to be reaching out to new people that are likely to hire someone like you. So if you're an engineer, let's pretend that's what you do. You would reach out to the people that run engineering companies around you. They have the potential to hire people like you, right? And there's a whole bunch of different ways you could do this. There's a whole bunch of channels you could use to reach out. There's a whole bunch of different things you could say to them. There's a whole bunch of things you could request. It's a huge umbrella of all kinds of activities. Extroverts can do this face to face. Introverts can do it all remotely. You know what I mean? It's just as effective. So that's the gist of how this stuff works, right? Now, not to go on forever about this, but in that example I just sort of said off the top of my head, where you call up a previous boss and basically say like, hey, if ever you're looking for someone who can do that, I'm open to coming back. I'm looking for something, now you know what I can do. If you have an opportunity there and you'd like me to come back for it, I'm up for it. So just so you know, I'm just putting that out there, right? Now, let's pretend that boss coincidentally did have a position that they were looking to fill. They had in the back of their mind, okay, I've got to get an employee to fill this role. Like, that's something else I got to do in the next couple of months, and then you appeared on the phone saying this to them, right? Well, there's an advantage in hiring you because they already know you. They've already worked with you. They know that you're serious. They know you're a good worker. They know you're not crazy. They know you're not a criminal. They know you have integrity. They know that you do what you say you're going to do and all the rest of it. So it's far less risky to hire you than it would be to hire a total stranger, right? So there's some advantages in that, right? That's why this is powerful. Right? Now, the catch is that what are the odds that your boss, your previous boss, is looking for someone right now? They're pretty slim, right? There may be like 5% chance, 1% chance, right? But the idea is if you put this message out to 500 people, right, that all are running engineering departments in your hometown and you're an engineer, the odds are is that some of them are coincidentally looking to hire right now. And you just landed right in their lap. Now, they could go with some stranger, or they could go with the person that's passionate enough to reach out, the person that they've got a sample of your social skills, your professionalism, your initiative, your ability to persuade, how much they like you and how much of a rapport you have. They already know all this about you, as opposed to the pile of resumes on their desk that are complete strangers. They don't know if these people are motivated. They don't know anything about these people, right? You have a clear advantage. So that's some of the principles involved in this, okay? Alex Rosca says, yes. Okay, the automotive company where I work get people rotated on a different job, not only one. For example, if someone does tests, it must do other posts in the company. You can't only do tests. Okay, I see. So what you're saying is that they rotate jobs. They do job cross-training where everybody does their time in like a different role so that everybody is trained in all the different roles. Like, is that's what I'm understanding? Alex says, why is that? So that people to know all processes if someone is missing or why? Well, there's multiple reasons why they do that. First of all, let's pretend you've got 5 people in this department and they all call in sick one day, right? Does that mean that whole department shuts down? If it's like an assembly line type affair, then that means the whole assembly line stops, right? Now, if everyone is cross-trained in how to do that step, right? You just transfer some people to do that role for like a couple of days to pick up the slack, and then the whole assembly line can keep moving, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious why they do it. It's versatility, right? It's to benefit the organization. Now, the fringe benefit is that it does benefit the individual too, the employee, because now you're cross-trained in how to do multiple functions or multiple roles. So if there's a job opening up in a certain area, you'd be eligible for that role. If there's a job opening up in a different area, you're still eligible for that. So it's good for the company and it's good for you. The only disadvantage is that it takes time, effort, and money to train people. That's the big disadvantage. And then if you spend all this time and effort on people training them and then they leave, you just trained up a great employee for your competitor to then hire and take advantage of, right? So if they're doing this, it's a good thing. And you should take, all things being equal, if they're doing this where you work, you should take as much of advantage of it as possible, because it makes you that much more valuable to them. It makes you much more versatile, and you can do more for them. I understand that you might not be interested in every role. I get that. I totally get that. But you should still take advantage of these programs. It's another reason why they wouldn't fire you, or they wouldn't lay you off. Instead, they'd lay someone else off because you're more highly trained than they are, right? You're more versatile. Does that make sense? That's kind of usually what's going on there. Danielle Jones says, do you recommend becoming a member of different associations in your field and networking that way? It's not the worst idea in the world. Is it the be-all, end-all? No. Is it necessary to network in your industry? No. It can be a nice sort of vehicle to be introduced to. Like usually associations, they'll have different events and things like that. They'll also facilitate different players in that industry all kind of interacting and talking together, So it starts with simply they publish, here's a list of our members, here's their contact information, here's what they do, So it's oh, okay, we got a nice sort of, list of all the people, some of the people that are in this business here, right? If you approach them, sometimes it's nice to say, well, I'm also a member of that association. I got your information from them, actually. That's how I became aware of you guys and the work that you do. It helps to, it helps saying stuff like that, I suppose. But are they like the gatekeepers of you being able to reach out to organizations? No. Are they the gatekeepers of you being able to discover the organizations? No. Sometimes when they have trade shows, that's really cool. I've been a member of several associations and they have all kinds of events. Some of them are just unnecessary, but other ones are kind of interesting. You go to essentially a trade show or a conference and you get to rub elbows with everybody at all these different companies. If you're the type of person that, you're into that, you can sort of, you go into a room full of people all schmoozing and talking to each other, and you meet a couple of people. That can be really cool, depending on how it's done. It can be productive. It's a great thing to practice your social skills too, and to meet people. You see, it legitimizes you. If they've seen you at different events and things, you're not just some weird stranger that's contacting them. Now, you're someone that's in the business. They know of you, and therefore it validates you a bit more. You know what I mean? So there are some benefits to it. If they charge you an arm and a leg to be a member, it might not be worth it, but it's definitely something to check out. But that's not the primary method I would use to network. I would network directly. I would just discover people, using the internet, and then just go and contact them using the internet. That's how I built a consulting business. I mean, I just did a ton of informational interviews with CEOs I didn't know, and they didn't know me. And I just did a whole bunch of these, and a lot of those people ended up becoming my consulting clients. So, you know what I mean? You don't need any kind of intermediary to go through them to do this. It's a free country, the majority of the countries in the world anyway. You can speak to whoever you want, you don't need anyone's permission. And thanks to the internet, you can discover them and you can communicate with them, and set things up and do it that way. So for introverts, certainly that's what I'd recommend. And there you go. Get in the chat. We've reached the end of the questions. I see there are 29 people here. Let me know what's on your mind, what you guys are struggling with, what you guys are wondering about in terms of job search. Nobody's asked me about job interview questions or anything like that today. It's really interesting. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that you're either between jobs, or you're not, but you're looking to further your career, and we can definitely speak to both of those. I mean, I do a live stream on Mondays where we talk about side hustles and entrepreneurship. That's another vehicle. Some people are interested in that. You want to work for yourself. Either you start something on the side, just low key, You could either turn a hobby into a, money-making venture, or you could, just try your hand at business. Sometimes it takes a bit of practice, but learning how to turn your value into money directly without needing an intermediary like an employer is a very empowering thing. So for those people that are into that, I talk about that on Mondays. I have a live stream called Side Hustle Ideas. And then on the higher end of business, I have a live stream on Fridays called Private Equity Rundown, where we talk about big business, buying and selling companies and all this kind of, how you can use some of those principles to help further your career. Mohammed says, good evening, Bill. Good evening, Mohammed. Thank you for joining us today. Let me know what's on your mind. Alex says, working harder, can it be a drop-off too? I mean, they can still fire people if you work harder and get rotated. It's an assembly line, and I am starting from Saturday night shift. Well, if it makes you feel any better, Alex, I put in my time on the midnight shift with weird days off. So I started out, like once I was kind of trained and stuff, I started out the railroad a lifetime ago, and I was on the midnight shift, and I had Tuesday, Wednesday off at one point. That was my weekend, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I was on the midnight shift. So you start work at midnight and you go to 8 in the morning, right? It's like a 24/7 thing. So I put in my time during that. I also did the weekend midnight shift, which I actually enjoyed, because what it meant is you pull essentially 16-hour days. Like you work 13 hours plus, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you do a turnover to one other person. So they're the day person, you're the night person. So 12 hours on, then 12 hours the other person. But there has to be some overlap, right? So it's more than 12 hours for everybody. But then you got like 4 days off a week. So once you did that intense weekend, you had something like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, So that was cool, The sleep schedule was not cool, but so I put in my time during that. Everyone kind of starts. You can make a bit of money, you get the shift premiums and all that kind of stuff. And it's also a little bit quieter, right? A little bit more controlled, a little bit more autonomy. So that's good. But don't worry too much. I mean, if it's a bit of a shift in your lifestyle, but it's not the end of the world for most people, But you had a question. You were saying like, working harder can be a drop-off. Yeah, listen, there's a whole bunch of reasons why people can get let go, if that's what you're asking. Now, you can have idiot managers that don't recognize talent, or there's a lot of political stuff going on, and they let people go that don't deserve it. You know what I mean? Like, there's all kinds. Like, unfortunately, it's an unjust world, and you do get that happening. Occasionally. But listen, if that does happen, okay, take it as a sign that you had a lucky escape, because if that's how they treat people, it would have never worked out there anyway. You know what I'm saying? If that's how they're operating, I know it's a big deal and it does not feel good, but just recognize it for what it is. It would have never worked out. At least it comes to an end now, rather than going another couple of years and then ending badly anyway. At least you can start the next thing now, which is hopefully a lot better of a thing that you're jumping into. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of reasons. And sometimes the business goes out of business. They go into bankruptcy and they shut down. And that's not on the workers. That's on the people running the company. It's entirely 100% their responsibility. I was in that role. Everything that happens in the company is your doing. So if the company fails, it's because of you. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why it's an area of very great responsibility. If you mess up and you do a bad job, other people lose their jobs. Like, not only do other people lose their money, but other people, like the employees, lose their jobs. Like, there's a lot riding on it, and it's a very stressful thing. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a former CEO. I'm never going back to doing that role again, because I did it for a while. I had a good experience, and then I had a bad experience. And I'm never going back to having that bad experience again. I don't need to. So So that's why employees that are very valuable, that do a good job, they do exactly what they're told, and they add a lot of value, they can get laid off anyway because of bad decisions by the management. You know? If you create an awesome product, but for whatever reason, the managers screw it up, they don't know how to sell it, or they enter into some weird partnership that doesn't make any sense, the whole thing fails. And it's not because of anything you did, is you were part of this larger entity that collectively they were doing something stupid. You know what I mean? So there's all kinds of reasons. Listen, it's nothing you can control. Just do your best, learn as much as you can, and if one situation doesn't work, just jump into another situation. And hopefully that will be a much better situation that ends up working out. That's what life's like. GWK says, please share tips on the process for getting remote jobs, especially cross countries or continents. Apart from what I've said already, like how to get jobs on the hidden job market and how to apply to posted jobs, there really isn't that much special to just getting remote jobs. You would just selectively apply to the ones that say that they're remote jobs, or you would apply to jobs in general from big companies and then ask about remote stuff. There really isn't much stuff you can do. Now, as far as the international thing is, I'm not an expert on getting employed across borders. That's going to vary depending on what your host country is and what your home country is. Okay? So going between India and Pakistan is going to be different from going between Canada and Great Britain, like the UK. You know what I mean? Like it really varies on the specifics. Okay? They have completely different processes for that stuff. But just as a blanket thing, all I would say is, first of all, locate a source of advice and expertise that can help you with your specific move in your country. Usually that starts with the government, and there might be specific resources locally that, help you with emigrating to a certain country, or like immigrating to a certain country and emigrating from your home country. Okay. And then learn all you can about networking that will help you. Okay. Like direct outreach and stuff like that. Alex Rosca says, from Saturday I start, 3 days off. Okay. Yeah, that's the grind, isn't it, Alex? Ellie says, what are your thoughts on going in person to a company that is hiring for a role you applied for online and asking to meet with the hiring manager if they are not available? If they are not available, I would leave my resume with the receptionist. Okay, what you're describing there is applying in person. That's called applying in person. That's not networking. That's applying in person. Applying in person, what you do is you do just what you described. You know that they're hiring. Even if you don't know that they're hiring, I would still do this. Because remember, 80% of jobs are not posted. So a lot of companies are actually hiring, but they're not posting any jobs, right? Because they're doing it through networking. Now, what you would do to do that properly, it might be a complication if they've already posted a job. Because what they're going to do if they posted a job is they're going to always refer you to that official hiring process. They're going to say, go apply online. Right? I see what you're doing. You're trying to get around our official hiring process to try and get some advantage. Go and apply through the standard process that we've said, this is how you get this job, right? Sometimes it works like that. Sometimes there's stuff you can do. Hold on one second. It's hard talking loud for several hours. Okay, so what you would do, what I'd recommend is, how I was talking about direct outreach a few minutes ago, right? Where you reach out to employers that are physically near you that hire people with your skills and background, right? The example I used was, if you're an engineer, you would reach out to engineering companies that are in your hometown that are physically located around you, right? Now, instead of like reaching out to them online and doing that, one other option is to do what you're suggesting here, which is applying in person. Now, what I would recommend is you march right through the front door of the company, and you're going to get to some kind of reception desk of some kind, right? Usually with an office manager or a receptionist behind the desk, right? And the only thing you're going to bring is essentially your resume and possibly in an envelope. And if you have business cards, you could bring them too. But you're going to go up to the receptionist and you're going to say, hi, would I be able to speak with, and then whoever it is, the manager of the engineering manager, okay? The manager of the engineering department. Now, maybe you know their name, maybe you don't know their name. I'm not sure. You could find that out online possibly, right? But you don't have to know it. So that's what you say. Now, 90% chance they're going to say no. Okay, sorry, they're not available, or they're in a meeting or something like that, right? Okay, and then what you say is not a problem, but listen, can I ask like what their name is? Like who is that? Who is that person here? And they would say, oh, that's John Smith. Like most of the time they'll tell you. Sometimes they may not, but it doesn't matter. You don't need that. You say, okay, no problem. Well, listen, if I leave something here with you, can you see that John Smith gets it? Is that okay? Now, 95% of the time they'll say, sure, not a problem. So like, okay, so that's what I'll do then. So, sorry, who's the individual? Then they'll maybe give you the name again, right? And then you just leave the envelope for John Smith, okay? And the envelope just has your resume inside. Okay, it could have other things in there too if you want, right? And then you leave it with the receptionist. See so if I leave this, you'll see they get it. And they say, yes. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. You have yourself a great day. And then you leave. Okay. Then what you do is you follow up. You call in to that company. You go to their switchboard. If you know the name of the person, great. You know John Smith, so you can be directed to John Smith's phone or John Smith's voicemail. And whether you leave a message or you say this in person, it doesn't matter. You say, hello, my name is X. Listen, I'm just following up. I'd left something at the front desk for you, and I was just following up to see if you'd received it. Right? And they could say yes or no. Hopefully, like a day later or something, they've received it. And you say, okay, well, that's great. You've received my thing. Listen, I just wanted you to know, I'm a fully professional engineer. I specialize in doing this type of work. I'm really great at solving problems in that area. If ever you're looking for a really good engineer to join your team, let me know, because I'm quite passionate about working for you guys. I know that you guys do work in this area. I think that's terribly exciting. And I live very close by. So it seems like a perfect fit for me. So if ever you're in that position, please let me know. That's it. Have yourself a great day. Something like that. Now, if they're not hiring, they're not hiring. Right? But if they are hiring, when you landed right in their lap, you were professional, you were polite, you were likable. The receptionist probably had a good experience dealing with you. The hiring manager had a good experience speaking with you, right? They have your resume. If they need to add someone else to their team of engineers, they're probably going to consider you first, Instead of posting the job and getting like a bunch of resumes on their desk, the advantage that you have is that, number one, they know you're interested. You're definitely interested working there. Nobody does this for companies that they don't care about working for, right? Number two, they've already kind of met you. The receptionist has met you in person, and the hiring manager has spoken to you, at least on the phone. So they know that, you're personable, you're professional, you get along, you have rapport, right? They've also seen a sample of how professional you are and how persuasive you are, And let me tell you, in engineering, that's a pretty rare kind of thing. No offense to engineers. A lot of technical skills there, not so many personal skills, right? And I know, because I've hired engineers, I've dealt with a lot of engineers, and it's staggering. some of the people I've had to deal with. It's like, whoa, my God, how is it that you are successful with that personality? You know what I'm saying? So these are the advantages that you have to elevate yourself above the crowd. And it's also just flattering. It's flattering for like a small company. that maybe has 50 people in it that, you're approaching them. You're saying, I want to work for you. And you're going to all this effort to demonstrate that. Half of what they do in job interviews is they try and verify how much you want the job, how passionate you are about actually working in this specific place. You've just demonstrated all of that to them before you've even started. So anyway, so that's how I would do it. It's slightly different, but the problem is if they've already posted the job, they're going to just say, well, go to our official hiring process, go apply on the website, right? And that kind of negates the whole point of doing this. So I would suggest that you would have better results if you went to companies that could hire you, but don't have a specific job posted right now. That would be the best situation. Because when they do hire, you're a shoo-in. They're going to look at you first. Okay, I'm falling a bit behind. So hopefully that helps Ellie. But you basically got the right idea. Brian says, when an interviewer asks how many weeks notice do you have to give to your current employer, are they fishing for info or just thinking about the schedule for onboarding a new hire? I don't know why they would ask that. They can find the answer very easily. You see, that's published in most countries, in most regions. Laws are done differently in every country, but usually the way it works is you have some version of the Employment Act, right? And then that becomes law, right? And then that is published. You can find that online. So you can look up, I'm in Manitoba. I could go to Google. I could type in Manitoba Employment Act. What does it say about vacation or something like that? I could find the actual law, and it's written in language that is not legalese. It's lay people can understand the language. It's very clear. So you can easily look that up. Now, for example, where I am in Manitoba, Canada, the law is that if you work for somebody for a year, you have to give 2 weeks notice. If you work for more than 5 years at that place, you have to give them, I think it's 6 weeks or 4 weeks notice. If you work for more than 15 years, you have to give them 6 weeks notice. If you work for less than a month, you don't have to give any notice. If you started less than 30 days ago, you can just quit and you have no legal obligation to notify them in advance. So it's going to be similar, around the world in different regions and stuff. But you can see that online. So they don't need to ask you. If they know from your resume you've only been there 2 years, they know you need to give legally this many days. But the thing is, whether you give notice or not, you can still quit without giving notice. It's just that there's slight complications. You have to give back some of your pay or something. Usually they pay you in arrears, so you have to work a full month and then they start paying you. So when you leave, you've got another paycheck coming your way. Even after you've left, you get another paycheck. If you don't give notice, then you only get paid half as much or something, So usually that's how it works. It's not the end of the world anyway. You can just up and quit a job and you can start another one. The only question is, how much money do you have to give back or whatever, in lieu of notice. And sometimes employers will just pay you in lieu of notice. They'll just march you out the door the day you say, I'm not interested in working here anymore, or I've taken another job. They'll just march you right out the door. I've had that happen to me at least once. You got marched to the door by your boss with a box in your hand with all your crap. It's fun, real fun, But it's good because they pay you for your time, so you don't have to work 2 weeks or whatever it is, and then you get paid for it anyway. So it kind of evens out. So I don't know why they would ask that. They can get the answer quite easily. I think it might be some kind of weird, overcomplicated test. The bottom line is that if you're passionate about a job, you can really start whenever they want. The question is, how inconvenient do you want it? Cheeky Little Schmidt says, had an interview for a lower position than what I previously worked. I think I blew it. Any advice besides practice to improve interviewing? I seem to freeze. Well, practice is important, but you've got to know what to practice. So bone up on how you do everything, how you answer all the questions and what you should say. And, etiquette and, all this kind of stuff. Remember, job interviews are basically about how likable you are. Don't be fooled by the fact they ask you technical questions. It's not about your technical skills. They already know your technical skills from your resume, right? The only people they invite down to job interviews are people that are technically qualified. What would be the point talking to somebody who's like, they're wonderful as a person, but they can't do the job? What would be the point of talking to that person? You can't hire them, no matter how much you like them. So the only people they invite for interviews are people that on paper are technically qualified. The only question that remains is, was their resume a fabrication or not? So maybe they ask technical questions just to verify you actually know a bit about this subject matter, But other than that, it's really about who you're like as a person, what you're like. Are you likable? Are you approachable? Are you easy to deal with? Do you behave in an appropriate way? Stuff like that. That's really what it's about. So learn all that stuff and then practice it, right? Don't just practice like saying whatever it is you're going to say, like learn, go and search out the best answers for things, drill them into your head, rehearse over and over again, and focus on what's important. Focus on having a good rapport. When you walk out of that job interview, what you want is those people to feel like, wow, that was fun. That was easy. I like that person. I'm kind of sad it's over. That's what you want them to feel. If they feel that way about you, you're a front runner right there. Alex says, advantage is on my side. Good production, automatic machines that make jobs easier, and time is good too. Financially is good too. Okay, good. Ash says, as someone who had multiple different job titles, new job every few years, I'm still in awe how people tackling the hidden job market get the employer to craft a completely new position tailored to you. Yeah, you can do, like all kinds of things happen. I wouldn't say that's typical. It's usually like a position they were going to fill anyway. Maybe they sort of changed they custom wrote the title based on someone's request as like to make them feel better, right? Sometimes, maybe they'll agree to less pay if they get to choose their own title. Things like that, right? Just little tricks like that. Alex Rosca. On the airbag, I've only added a plastic plate in the press machine. There's an electronic circuit board, and then I've pushed a button. Also works electronic robot arm. That's great. Yeah, but Alex, it's knowing when to press the button, right? For example, when you press the button, nobody got their arm stuck in the machinery, right? When you press the button, nothing jammed and got broken, right? Don't be fooled, Let me tell you a very brief story here. We used to send technicians out to fix highly complex industrial equipment. Things with control systems and electric motors and pneumatics and pumps and all this kind of stuff. You have a plant that's producing potash or oil and gas or, some kind of, mining product or agricultural product. It's a plant where if the plant stops producing because a piece of equipment breaks, they're losing $1 million of revenue a day, right? Now, the plant is down because their equipment is not working right. They need a technician to go fix it. We send out a technician. Technician goes to the plant, looks at the equipment, reaches in back, flicks a switch, click. Plant's working again. They get the bill, $20,000. Plant manager says, "Oh my God, what the hell? We're not paying $20,000. It took the guy 5 minutes, and he didn't even use any tools." Right? Now, every hour they were down, they were losing somewhere in the order of $100,000. So somewhere in there, maybe not quite, but you know what I'm saying. It took 3 hours for the technician to get there, and that's traveling as fast as you can, right? You know what I mean? So they lost something like $300,000, somewhere in that ballpark already, just waiting for the guy, right? We charged them $20,000. That's nothing compared to the time lost so far. Now, you can imagine if it had taken the guy an hour to fix it instead of 5 minutes, right? It'd have been another nearly $100,000 cost, right? Impact. So basically, doing the job, 5 minutes, not that much. Knowing what to do, 25 years experience. It's not that you're not paying people by the hour. It's the value of what we're providing, right? They paid it, and they paid it happily because we were always going to have their back if that happened again, because we dropped everything to go and help them, right? And we understood the urgency. We understood the need. We sent our best person, and we got them there as fast as humanly possible. You know what I mean? So, like, that's the thing. This stuff is kind of deceptive sometimes when you look at it from different perspectives. But at the end of the day, what matters is what actually happens in the real world. And they gladly paid it, and they kept calling us in the future, you know? Because what we were charging was peanuts compared to what they were losing. Right? So value is kind of an interesting thing, right? Depends on how you look at it. There's many different ways of looking at it. So just pressing a button, Alex, don't knock it. Amaze says, the hidden job market seems accessible mainly to those with connections to recruiters or hiring managers. Is there a way to uncover unposted jobs without already knowing someone on the inside? Amazed, you've been listening to my stuff for a while. I don't understand why you could say something like this. You're completely wrong. That's not what it is. That's not who it benefits, and that's not how it's done. So it's kind of surprising to me that I would hear you say that. I mean, I have recommended a video many times that hopefully you've heard me say. I'll do it again. It's located in the description box of this video. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Go watch that video. That answers your question. Mohammed says, any recommendations for PR books? Like public relations books? No, sorry. I don't work in public relations. There's all kinds of stuff out there on PR. A lot of it is like, you know, just crap, like most things. You know, just some famous person writes a book. It's all based on nothing. Here's how do you determine what's a good PR book from what's a crap PR book? Here's what you do. Go to some of the best universities in the world. Go to their website, okay? Go and look within their business degrees, like say an MBA or anything else. Look for the course, if there is one, on public relations, okay? Sometimes it's tied to marketing, which it kind of should be. Sometimes, for whatever silly reason, it's tied to HR, which it shouldn't be, but some people do it anyway. Look at what textbook they're using in the course. If it's a very reputable university that produces some of, like, you know, the best sort of CEOs and things in the world come from that university, places like Stanford, Harvard, Yale, you know, like, you know, whatever, you know, Boston, like all these places, the Ivy League stuff, and stuff in other countries. There's a lot of stuff like in every other country. Look at what books they're using, and then go see if you can buy it on Amazon. You know, like that's what this course is. Basically, I give you a reading list of some of the best books in the world for the respective topics, and then I guide you through it. You buy them off Amazon. You can buy the current version, which, you know, costs like $100, or you could buy like one that's 1 or 2 editions old, and that's like $5. You know what I mean? And then you read it. You know, so if you want to learn public relations specifically, that's how I would cut through the mire of like knowing what's a good book and what isn't. See if it's been recommended in those programs. See if they're using it. If professors who are experts on this stuff are using it as their textbook, that's probably a good book. It's probably not a bunch of garbage. You know, somebody's personal opinion based on nothing. Okay, so that's what I would say. JS, is it good to come to an interview with business cards? I've been numerous that it may seem cocky. No, it's not cocky. I come to all my interviews with business cards. Like, listen, this is what I actually recommend. Okay. most people have a LinkedIn profile, right? You can hopefully relate to that. Well, you know, the header of the LinkedIn profile, it's got your picture, like it's got like presumably a headshot. It's got your name. It's got your title, like your tagline, who you are, right? You could say student, or you could say, engineering professional, or you could say, whatever you're trying to do. It's got your contact information, your phone number, email address, social media stuff, if that's relevant, And then what you do is you take that and you just put it on a business card. This is my card. It says, Bill. It says my title, former CEO. And it says, here's my contact information. Here's a picture of me, right? And the main reason for having this is because you put it in like a chest pocket or something. Every single person you meet, the first thing you do when you shake their hand or whatever, is you take out your card, you say, here, I'm Bill, good to meet you. And then that's a signal for them to take out their business cards and give it to you. Now, it's good that you have a record of their business card because now you know exactly who you're talking to. And this is a record of after the fact, this is the person I spoke to, right? So if you go to a job interview, and let's say it's a panel interview, there's 4 people on the other side of the table. They introduce themselves to you, but you can't remember anyone's name or anyone's position if you're normal, right? Some people can, which is tremendous, by the way, but most people can't. Well, you've got all 4 of their business cards. If you have to sit down and talk to them, you put them all on the table in front of you. So like, John, Francine, I can see that you're the HR person, and I can see that you're the divisional manager, and I can see you're the recruiter, and I can see you're the hiring manager, So it's like, it really helps, right? Knowing who you're talking to. That's the reason you have the business card, mainly, is to get other people's business cards, right? For what it's worth, they have a record of who they spoke to, and sometimes that's useful. But it's not cocky. It's part of business etiquette, Most events and stuff that I've been to, everybody's got their business card, whether they're a CEO or they're a board member or they're a salesperson. They've all got business cards, and they all give them out. That's the whole point. And the great thing is that, it costs you something like $20 to get like a whole stack of these. The place I used to use was a place called Vistaprint. They're online. You just like submit your picture and you pick the design and write in the text, and they'll just make you up a card and they'll send you a whole stack. And they're very professional. They look really awesome. I mean, I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I'm just saying that's a place I used. It's been a long time since I had to make up business cards, but they're not cocky. They're, even in this day and age, like paper business cards, very, very useful and used. They're widespread. Amaze says, in my field, it's nearly impossible to get any in-person access to a recruiter or hiring manager. Why would you want to talk to a recruiter? Or, okay, hiring manager I can see. Why do you want to talk to a recruiter? Recruiters are pointless. They're recruiting for their job. Now, unless you're going to like apply for their job and play by their rules, this kind of demeaning, dehumanizing process where it might be appropriate for like entry-level people, but if you're a professional, usually you kind of rise above that. The recruiter's role is basically a clerk or a grunt. The hiring manager wants to hire you. The recruiter is just there to essentially fill in the paperwork, do the background checks, call the references, all that kind of grunt work. That's usually what they're there for, So beyond the entry level, like if you're kind of established in your career, usually talking to the recruiter is not kind of the first thing. You'd want to reach out to hiring managers without a scheduled appointment. Okay, well, that's the whole point. One of the things you can do is you can get a scheduled appointment, and you can do better than that. You can get not just a scheduled appointment in their office on their turf. You can meet them at a neutral place like a coffee shop. Starbucks are great. It's not on their turf. It's a referral. They want to meet you. It's not like you forcing your way onto anybody's to try and get anything. It's them wanting to meet you. In fact, that was kind of a bit of a red flag with me. If I met someone that wanted to talk to me, but they wanted me to go to their office, I'd usually regard that as a red flag, because that suggested that they didn't want to lift a finger to go and like meet with me. Pretty much almost all the meetings I did, with some exceptions, were in Starbucks and coffee shops and things like this. Much better. It's a neutral place. You can speak more freely, this kind of thing. Security protocols typically prevent walk-ins. Any thought? Well, in some industries, sure, but that's certainly not universal. Think of how many small businesses there are in your city that you can just walk into. Think of any store, if you want to work at a store or a warehouse or anything like that. You can just walk in. Any place where like a loading bay or a sort of pickup area, is, you can walk right in. You know what I mean? That's not universal. That's far from universal. Jason Week says, why does it seem that younger people can get jobs easier than older people? You know what's funny, Jason? They're saying the same thing about older people. What they're saying is that, you guys have all these connections and you guys are established and everyone, all these boomers, and they'll call everyone older than them a boomer. I've noticed that, not the baby boomers, but like anyone just older than them. They could be like 30 years old and they're calling people boomers. It's so stupid. And they say, well, you guys are all privileged. You're the elite. We got nothing, right? The grass is always greener, Jason. That's the thing, what they have that you might not have is that they might be desperate. They'll take anything, right? You might have more of an ego. I don't mean this in a bad way, just that you've had professional jobs. You're already up here. So the thought of going down here and taking a step down, you're not into that, right? But for them that are here, they'll take that and they'll be happy to get it, right? So that is what they have over you. They also generally have more energy. The younger we are, the more energy we have. Some of you guys, like, I'm so jealous of the amount of energy you guys have. It's like, let me tell you, in your 50s, it's like, it's not like you're 20 anymore. I'd love to be able to do a million things that I can't, and that's typical. So you got a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of fire, a lot of drive. I wish I could get that back. And I'm not alone. A lot of people in my situation, we're looking at you guys and we're so envious, You're absolutely welcome, Ellie. That was an intelligent question. Jason Week says, also, thank you for your time. You're absolutely welcome, Jason. You're asking intelligent stuff too, It's like the younger, like, you're absolutely right to call this out. It does seem like that. And we get so many mixed signals from every direction. It's hard to sort through the mire of it and see what's actually going on. Alex says, of course, even when I push the button, I am waiting for the product to be rotated on the press. So to take it and add it to the foam machine and on the robot. Yeah, it's a fallacy that, like, to earn a lot of money, you have to work like an absolute dog and sweat like a pig. You really don't. It's like, when you're saying that stuff, the thing that comes to mind for me, I'm an electrical guy, is there's a type of an electrician who works highly specialized, who works on high voltage equipment that's live. They'll work on the pylons, the electricity pylons. Nobody shuts off that equipment before people service it. They work on it live. Now, they have been extensively trained, okay, in all kinds of safety things, all kinds of like technical things, right? Those jobs are very high paying. They can be very dangerous. But the thing is, if you see what those people actually do, a lot of the times, at least in my experience, they don't do much work. They go up and they do one little thing, right? Now that thing just cost you like thousands and thousands of dollars to get that guy to do that, right? It took him a couple of minutes, but it's the training and, being able to find someone who's willing to go and do that, right? It's not like it was hard. They just went up there, they went click, like that, right? Or they crimped something or, whatever it was. It just like took like a few seconds, So don't knock it. What we see in the real world is we see people like that are paid, extraordinary amounts of money because of the circumstances under which they do it. It might look easy, but they're actually using a lot of judgment. Unbeknownst to people like me, they're judging the weather conditions, the wind, They're judging the amount of grime on the, equipment. They're you know what I mean? Like they're looking at birds coming around, that might swoop down and startle them and stuff. Like there's all kinds of intelligence going into it. So it might seem very simple, but it's really not. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you can't abuse this. I'm just saying that looks can sometimes be deceiving, But the machine help you make it easier, and you have a target on screen and how many products you do, and of course traceability. Yes. You're welcome, Mohammed. And you're welcome, Jason. I'm glad that's at least somewhat useful. Alex says, I'm 38, a millennial, still young. Yeah, I know. Don't you hate it when people call you a boomer? I've just seen that. I've seen people a generation younger than me, and they're called a boomer. It's like, that doesn't make me feel good. And I hate the way they say it. They always say it in a derogatory way too. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Okay, we've been doing this for about an hour and a half. There's 29 people here. You guys are awesome. If you're between jobs right now, I wish you all the luck in the world. There's a lot of resources you have. Learn as much as you can. Practice as much as you can. Do mock interviews. For God's sake, do mock interviews. Even if it's just like a friend or family member. If you want to get better at job interviews, practice. That's how we get good. Everybody starts out not knowing what the hell's going on, not having a clue. But the more you know, the further you get on that journey and the more things open up. Okay, so do that. If you need additional help from me, check out this course. That's where I put all my advice on how to get hired. The big thing, I think, that's of value in that course is the how to get hired on the hidden job market stuff. Okay, that's really where it's at. So if you don't know anything about that, check out that course. That can really clue you in. If you want to climb the ladder, you want to be seen as a contender for management positions, check out this course. Okay, that'll help you with the advanced communication skills. It'll help you understand all the personal stuff, how you conduct yourself and how you communicate with people, because that's an absolute showstopper. It doesn't matter if you're a technical whiz. If you don't have any appreciation for this stuff, they will never consider you for those roles. So check it out if that's what your goal is. And if you are looking to learn business, to understand, the perspective of your employer, to make better decisions at work and have an appreciation for, what the employer considers good, that can help your career. Check out that. Best bang for the buck around in learning business. The other advantage of that, of course, is if you just want to learn how to work for yourself, you want to make money for yourself, you want to change your value into cash without needing an intermediary like an employer to do it for you, that can certainly get you started on that. So check those out. I will be back on Friday, so if you got any more questions or whatever, I'm doing another edition of Honest HR Nitrous on Friday. Feel free to come back and ask me some questions. I'll help you out if I can. Until then, take care of yourselves, and I wish you the best of luck. See you soon.